Have you ever experienced something so crippling in your life that has made you feel broken? I have. Are you someone who has a giving heart but is struggling to feel good themselves? Are you consistently putting your needs aside to take care of everyone else? If so, you're not alone. Giving starts with giving to yourself so that you are able to give of yourself to other people. Isn't it time you took back control and discovered what makes you tick? Join me in my journey and find out how you can feel better about yourself, live your best life, and share that with others. Thinking of yourself, it doesn't make you selfish, it makes you brave. I'm Nelia, and this is the Giving Starts With You podcast. If you're looking for a way to start your self-care journey or looking for a unique gift to give to someone at Christmas, check out my new book, The Ultimate I Deserve a Break coloring book. It's filled with inspirational designs created by me, all around giving and living intentionally. So if you'd like to check that out, it's available on Amazon, as well as my new website at www.neliahut.com. That's www.neliahutt.com. Welcome to the Giving Starts With You podcast. I'm your host, Nelia Hutt. Thank you again for coming and joining me and my beautiful guest today for some healing. We're going to be talking about some healing. We're going to be talking about just how to get through life. And there's just so many things. I'm so excited. So today we have Melany Oliver from Dubai. Hi, Melany. How are you?
Hi, Nelia. I'm very well, thank you. And thank you for inviting me to be your guest here on your podcast.
The pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much for accepting and for coming on and sharing with us today. For the past 15 years, Melany has been working as a holistic therapist, a spiritual guide, and a healing coach. After a decade of working with hundreds of women and noticing how emotions affect people's health and impact their life, she now specializes in helping women who suffer from deep emotional wounds. I love this so much. It's so needed in the world. It honestly is. Women who are wounded by their childhood traumas and past negative relationships heal themselves and open themselves to love so that they can live a happier, healthier, and more fulfilling life. That's what my podcast is all about. How can we live better? How can we live better? How can we do more than just take up space, and it's so important. I just warm welcome to Melany today. She, we've just started our conversation, but I could already tell like her heart right through the screen. So thank you, Melany. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'll start by saying that I loved the title of your podcast, like Giving Starts With You. I was actually working with a client just this week, and I shared with her, because she had the pattern of self-sacrificing and people-pleasing and all of that. And and obviously, eventually, you just burn out, right? You end up being resentful of the people that you're giving to. But at the end of the day, it's your choice. It's your decision to give from when your cup is empty. And I was sharing with her the analogy of I don't know if it's an analogy or metaphor of putting the gas mask on first before you actually, help, even if it's your husband or your child. We have a tendency to do, especially for our loved ones and our family. But, if you pass out because you don't have the gas mask on, then you can't actually, be of any help. So, yeah, I just thought I'd share that.
Oh, thank you so much. And I appreciate that. And I learned that the hard way, because of burnout, and a lot of us do. And that's why we're here. And that's why you're here, is just to help remind us, you have to. We're not taught to do that necessarily growing up. It's selfish. It's selfish. Don't think of yourself. Don't talk about yourself. Lower your standards, as women sometimes. If you do something good, or if you get a compliment, let's just dismiss it, So I think it's so important. I don't know. Let's start from the beginning. I know that You have a story on your site about your grandmother and about you and the start of your journey and everything. Can you tell us a little bit about how this all started and what put you on this path of learning more?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm from Bahia. I'm not sure if you know what that is. It's in the northeast of Brazil, on the coast, and uh, it's very occult. There's a lot of mysticism. There's a lot of rituals. It's a lot of African slaves came there from Benin, and back in the day, and so there's a lot of African culture and things like that. So I grew up, immersed in this.
Mm.
Uh, going to see witch doctors and getting herbs for having certain baths and doing all sorts of crazy like rituals like popcorn showers and I don't know what else. So I was and in Bahia there's spiritualist churches like in every corner, every street corner, and it's not the spirituality like you see in the Western world. It's different. It's more based on spirits, and they have spirit doctors, and basically they followed a guy named Allan Kardec. I'm not sure if you've heard of him.
I have it.
He was the very first, he was a famous medium back in, I think it was in the 40s, or and he channeled the first book by spirit. So a lot of the philosophies that they follow is based on his teachings. So I was sort of introduced into like the spiritual, occult, witch doctor, and all of that stuff from a very early age, and that kind of like fascinated me. My grandmother used to cleanse my energies with herbs, and so I was always curious about this side of things, and I remember when I had nightmares and instead of going to, or if I had some sort of, if I was sad or depressed, instead of taking me to a psychologist, I would get taken to the witch doctor or to the spirit doctor. And so that kind of left a big imprint, I think, in me in terms of what healing is. So when I started to develop like depression and like all my negative patterns in my teens, naturally, like the first thing that came to me was, I need to go see a spirit doctor. I need to go to the witch doctor. No, I didn't think to go to a psychologist or a therapist,
Right.
So when I was around 18, I studied Reiki. So I started with Reiki healing, and then from then I was doing things like tarot and color therapy and all of this, because color therapy and all of that is they teach it in these spiritual centers. So I started learning about that, and then when I got to choose basically to which university to go to, I basically wanted to do that. And so I started to look for more academic courses in natural therapies, and then I found a course focused on health sciences and holistic and complementary therapies from the University of Westminster. And then I studied things like aromatherapy and reflexology and shiatsu and environmental stress. We did do counseling and things like that as well. So from there, it went to, after I left uni, I continued my studies. So really, I just dove into that whole field from an early age of just holistic, complementary, anything that was alternative. I wasn't really into the orthodox, method. It had to be like spiritual or herbs and alternative therapies. So that's kind of like how it started. But I started working with clients with these alternative therapies, so aromatherapy and counseling and anything that I could use that was natural, and Reiki and massage and all of that. But after a while, as you mentioned, I noticed that it was emotions that was actually keeping them stuck. So and that just led me on a whole other journey of wow, so I need to focus then on their emotions, because what I noticed is that the clients that were not healing were the ones that were not processing their emotions. They wanted to suppress it, and they would always come back a few months later repeating the same pattern, and I always wonder, why are they not healing? And that's kind of what made me sort of look deeper into emotions and start my whole other journey on emotions. But also going back to my story, it was only when I started to process my emotions, in particular my childhood traumas, that my life started to change. That the more that I healed, the less desire that I had to I didn't mention before, but to take drugs, and I was into all sorts of negative, patterns. I was depressed, I was suicidal, and all of that. And so the more that I noticed that the more that I processed my emotions, the better I felt, basically. And the same happened with my clients. Sorry, that's it in a nutshell, but we can dive deeper into any questions that you have.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I know what suppressing feelings is all about. I did that for 12 years after my father passed away. And then I was diagnosed, I don't know if you know this, but my listeners do, but I was diagnosed with, anxiety, depression, PTSD, loneliness, all these things, because I held my feelings in. So one of my missions now is to help people don't do what I did. Don't do that, because it can create addiction. It can create so many other things. And if you don't get to the root of the problem, no matter what you do, it's not really going to move you forward. You have to start with the pain, even though that's the hardest part.
100%.
Yeah. So when you were in that state of mind as well, when you were younger and you went through the depression and all those things that you described, what was the first step for you in order to open up your feelings? Because when you're feeling like that, it's almost like you're in a daze, right? And you're moving from one moment to the next. And sometimes we don't feel strong enough to even begin to share our feelings. What for you was like the very first step of opening up?
So, I mean, I wouldn't say opening up, but the first step was the Reiki, actually, because I knew that I wasn't feeling good and I was depressed, but nobody really taught me about emotions then. But I noticed that when I had that Reiki, I felt a little bit better. So I felt, there's some hope, of feeling better. I mean, much later on, I realized that what I was doing is trying to bypass feeling the emotions. But that my teacher then, and she didn't tell me, I didn't know, and nobody was teaching me about emotions. But I just, from that experience, I felt, okay, so if I feel better here, it's possible, for me to heal. And then I remember it was 4 or 5 years after that, when I was around 22, 23, I went to therapy, and basically one of my traumas came up. I was raped when I was 14. And basically I just decided that it didn't happen, like straight after. And I had pushed it so far down that I forgot about it. I mean, how bad is that? And this is what we do, right? When we process, when we suppress a trauma, you actually shut off awareness to that trauma. You shut off conscious awareness. So I suppressed it so much, I forgot about it. And it came up in the session, and I just started crying. And I remember saying to the therapist, I wasn't ready to deal with it. And I once again pushed it down. And I didn't deal with it until a few years later, but that left an impact on me. And then it was only after I had my voice analyzed by a guy named John Kelly, a very interesting guy named John Kelly, that I was following. And basically he pinpointed some of my traumas and said that, and he was the one that really put me down and said, look, you need to deal with your traumas, otherwise you're not going to basically break these patterns. And it was from that conversation that I took what he said to heart, and from then on I started to process my childhood traumas. So it was challenging because I went to a lot of healers, but it was all these energy healing techniques and this herb and that herb, and no one was telling me you need to deal with your traumas. They were all just giving me tools to sort of suppress, and maybe they didn't know either. So I'm not sort of blaming them, but I was just taught to use these tools. So it was a process. So the first time it came up, and I didn't have the support to deal with it. And then after this, John Kelly mentioned that, then I started to look for, for a therapist and for a healing coach and therapist to help me through going back and dealing one by one with my traumas.
Thank goodness for people like John Kelly, right? So we talk about, sometimes it takes that one person to jolt us out of, our state, because I think most people, when they suppress their feelings, it's because they think they're protecting themselves. Like, it's a way of, well, if I don't think of it, it didn't happen, like you just said. And I don't, I can ignore that I feel like this. I can ignore that I feel like that.
And I'm over it.
Yes.
There's this whole mentality, I think, of mind over matter. Just you have to have a strong mind and not think about it and you'll be fine. And that's like the worst thing that you can do, right?
Yeah, because showing emotion, God forbid, is weak, right? Like, that's what
you're not allowed to. And don't play the victim.
Yes. And who wants to hear about my stuff anyway,
Yeah.
It's sad that this is the world we live in. And so it's so important to hear stories like this and to hear success stories like you. And now someone who has struggled with these things, and we all have something. We all have some kind of trauma, different from each other, and we deal with things differently. But then to now work in this field where you're helping people, I love that so much, because you're coming full circle. And I find that it not only helps other people, but it continues to heal you as well, right? Being in this work.
Yeah, 100%. And also, like, I really believe that the world is not going to change unless we all do our inner work. Okay, I can sort of heal myself and evolve, but then when you see other people suffering, and then where's the joy in that?
Yeah, pain is tough. It's really tough. Yeah. So when you first started and working with your clients, what kind of like transformations did you see when people started opening up with their emotions and connecting that if I do this, if I start opening up about my emotions, this is, my life can change in this way. Like, what kind of things did you experience through those people?
Yeah. So I remember the first couple of clients that I had, two of them had nervous breakdowns. One of them, half her face and her arm and like half of her body, the right side of her body, was starting to go numb from having a nervous breakdown. The doctor said that, nothing that they could do. It was just, stress. So we worked together for just 3 months and working completely on emotions. I don't diagnose, I don't do anything. I just work on helping her process her emotions. And lo and behold, after 3 months, she got all her nervous system came back. So she started to feel again on all that side of the body, and she was completely happy and healthy and recovered.
Let's just think about that for a second. If people are listening right now, because so I suffer from anxiety, and when it was at the worst, I used to feel like bugs were crawling up and down my arms. And if you've never felt anxious or paralyzed on part of your body, or if you've never felt that, you might be thinking, well, that's kind of weird, but if you have, how real it feels. So first of all, there's judgment here, right? So people need to stop judging other people for their symptoms and for their things. But just for that one person, I just don't want to go by that so quickly, because for that one person, a lot changed.
Yeah.
A lot.
She got her health back, her nervous system. It was going to take over. It was slowly, it started in her face and it started to go down her arm, and it was slowly taking over her body.
It just shows you how much the mind is connected, right, with the body. I mean, more than what people realize. And just the fear of day to day, what's happening to me? Why is my body like this? There's just so many crucial reasons to deal with your emotions. And here's an example that you've just given us. There's just so many things. She probably had, it's not just the numbness, she probably had fear because what's happening? Am I having a stroke? Like, what, am I ever going to feel better? She probably had people judge her for being crazy because of her symptoms. Like, there's so
or
many,
exaggerating.
yes,
I
or
get
playing
that a
the
lot.
victim or what. And so that can play on your self-esteem, your self-confidence, the love you have for yourself. There's so many things that play into that.
And
So
she
I
had
just don't
kids,
want,
and what's going to happen to me if I can't look after my kids?
It's just like there's a ripple thing. It just, these feelings of suppression really do affect everything, and they affect the immediate people in your life, and it can be debilitating. So I just want people to realize that. So that's great. I'm glad you were able to help her.
And I'm happy that you sort of stopped me. And I think because when it comes to health, like we can talk about, relationships, and I can give you lots of other transformation with other things. But when it comes to health, people find it really hard to link your health, physical health, with emotions. And they want a pill, they want a surgery or something, but they refuse to see the link with the emotions. And I really believe, like, the only reason why you got to that state is because you've been suppressing your emotions for so many years. It didn't just happen overnight, and that energy, that emotion has to go somewhere. And depending on the emotion and how you respond to it and your personality, it will affect different parts of your body. That's why you get different sort of diseases with different, types of emotions and things like that.
Absolutely.
But I just really want people to hear this, because if you just focus on healing your emotional wounds and traumas, you can actually heal physical conditions.
Yes. And you know what? I'm so glad that you said about the connection, and you reiterated that, because when we're looking for that quick pill, that quick fix, all these things, we're looking for somebody else to solve this problem. And the reason why we're in this is because we're waiting for other people to solve this problem for us. We're not wanting to necessarily put in the work sometimes because it's hard.
No.
It's painful.
We don't want to look within.
Yeah. So I think the more we help people realize that no one's coming to save you. That's something I say all the time. People can help you through your journey, but if you're not ready, nobody is going to come. You need to want to put in the work. And that's the hardest step, I think, is saying, I'm worth enough to feel better. Like, this is possible,
the desire has to come from you. The desire to heal has to start from you. Otherwise, I mean, you can go see, therapists or coaches, and you can have guides, but nothing will change until you, like you said, until you make the decision inside of you. Then other people can support you, right? They can support you and guide you.
And that's true for so many things, whether you're quitting smoking or drinking or kinder to people, it always starts with us. But I think as human beings, we're looking for quick gratification, right? So we're looking for all the people outside. Well, why can't you just give me something quick, right?
The one-click society, I call it.
I love that. But it's so true, because it can really it doesn't just affect you. Healing yourself will affect your family, your community, it's amazing. We have to put in the work. We are worth it. And I think people need to know that we have to love ourselves, in order to do all of these things. But we do need guidance. We cannot do it by ourselves. So that's why we need people like you, Melany, and we need people that have been there and know how to work through it. Like, I would never go and see a coach who didn't have any experience, but knew all the things from a book. I think you do have to connect with somebody like yourself who's been through that. You've had the trial and error. You have gone through different, you've tried different things. You see what you can connect with. And I think that's so important.
100%. And just based on that, I will share that I've had some clients who are psychologists and psychiatrists, and some who are both. psychologists and psychiatrists, and they were stuck in patterns. And because they weren't able to feel their emotions. They knew, they had more knowledge than me about certain diagnoses and the mind and all of that, but they weren't able to actually process their emotions. So that to me says it all. It's not just about knowledge in your head, it's about really feeling it, you know, in your body. And most people don't know how. And I think that once you have gone through it, like I have, I'm still a work in progress, but, you know, I've done enough to be able to help, you know, a lot of people. People can, I call it empathetic healing. I'm not sure if you've heard that term, but it's like it's a resonance, like you resonate and you hold the space for them to be able to go to the depth that they need to in order to heal. And because I've been there, I can hold it to that depth. I'm not scared of, you know, the darkness or going to those deep places. And just by holding that space there for them, they feel safe in being able to access their own wound and process it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. You know, feeling safe is huge, you know, and I think of the topics that we're talking about today. I always think of, you know, when people say it takes a village to raise a child, right? Because it takes a team of people. You know, you're at the head of that team, like as a patient, right? Or as someone who needs, as a client, as somebody who needs that inner healing. And then although it has to start with you, then you need people like you. You might need the psychologist, that's like, you know, then there's a team of people. Everybody has its own place, but none of those doors can be open without the willingness, like you said. And that's 100%. Where I find people struggle the most.
Yeah.
Taking that very first step. Like, what advice would you have? Like if somebody came to you and they said, you know, I'm not sure what's happening with me, but I don't feel that I'm living my life the way that I want to. I'm feeling kind of, you know, depressed. I'm feeling all these things. And they were kind of resistant to accepting their own ownership, right? So what's the first step, you think, to maybe not really convincing, but maybe just having that talk with them about feeling that they're worth it? You know, sometimes we just need to help people feel, what's the word I'm looking for? Like help people feel that they matter and that they do need to put in the work, no matter how hard it is. I don't know if I'm describing it properly, but somebody who's resisting it, you know?
So I always say you need to start where you are. You can't skip steps.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I wish you could, but I always start with, you know, accepting where you are. And if you owning your truth in this moment. So if you feel depressed, say, I feel depressed. You know, so for me, the first step is always being truthful about where you are. I think that a lot of people, they know, let's say, that they are depressed, but they resist where they are, you know, and you can't start to change without accepting where you are.
Because then you're suppressing again. Like if you can't name it, that's
and you're fighting step. Reality. So it's really about owning where you are and really owning your truth. It's helpful to say it and to name things, like you said, but just fully accepting, okay, this is where I'm at. This is what I've, you know, created for myself. This is how I feel. But I think just based on a lot of the clients that I've worked with, what people struggle with the most is actually understanding themselves and understanding their emotions. So, for example, with depression, and I know because I suffered from depression for, you know, years, what I didn't know, I thought I was depressed, but actually I was suppressing anger and rage at my childhood. You know, and if you don't understand the language of emotions and how a lot of people use they use a more acceptable emotion because they don't want to feel, let's say, I didn't want to feel the rage and the anger. Also because, you know, as a child, it wasn't safe for me to feel rage and anger because I was beaten, you know, by my mother. So I had suppressed it for so long. And then in my teens, it turned into depression because I wasn't allowed to feel the rage.
wasn't acceptable. I like that you mentioned the
No.
acceptable emotions, because there are definitely acceptable and not acceptable. Like people do judge you,
Yes.
you know.
So it's more acceptable to be identified as someone who is depressed than someone who is filled with rage. A woman who is filled with rage and angry, that's
Mm.
ugly. That's
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love that you said that, because I think people will resonate with that a lot. And but who says, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable? Like, I think the more we feel in tune with who we are, and we apologize less for being who we are, the more things become acceptable, and we don't really care if they're not acceptable. Like, you get to a point, like in all the work that you've done with yourself, you're now at a point where maybe, you don't really put as much emphasis on what other people think is acceptable. You
uh,
just don't care, because you're okay. You're at peace with it. And that's what this is about, like we all just have one life. So
yeah.
let's try to not have other people's judgments affect and change who we are and what we want to do in our healing, right?
100%. And I'll add to that, like a lot of the times it was our parents projected judgments and emotions that we take on. That's why we don't allow ourselves to feel certain emotions, and then they end up being stuck in our bodies.
Yeah, because our parents, oh, you're not allowed to do that. If you fall, don't cry. If
Yeah.
if you, it's not ladylike to be that angry or to throw something.
Yes.
Don't talk
Or
back
I'll
to
give you
me.
something
Or
to cry about.
yes, and I have a teenager now, and it's almost like there's this fine line between talking back
Mm.
and allowing him to share how he feels,
Wow.
right? Because there's a way
Yeah.
I want him to express himself to me, because I was not able to do that at his age, like
Yeah.
like you're saying in your story. But at the same time, there is a fine line between, I don't know. It's like
There is. Yeah.
you want to hear the honesty as much as it hurts, but at the same time, you want them to be respectful, right? So we
Yes.
can be respectful yet true in our, in it's too bad. Like a lot of kids could go to their parents, like I wish for that. Because I think that would solve a lot of problems in our adulthood if we could
It
just,
would. Yeah. It would change the world, I think.
yeah, because a lot of do you find a lot of your clients, their stuff stems from when they were children?
Oh, 100%. All of them.
Yeah,
All of them. 100%.
because they don't feel like they have a voice as a child, right? So I think that's
Then, yeah.
important.
They
Yeah.
don't have a voice. It wasn't safe to feel emotion. They weren't taught. You need to be seen and not heard,
Mm.
or they were beaten as well. Or
Mm.
yeah, it all stems from childhood, I believe.
Yeah, you're little, so you have no personality. You don't have anything to say, and nothing you're going to say is important. So I don't want to see, the sad face and the anger, and just respect your parents. And
Yeah,
there, so sad. But we're
yeah, it
learning.
breaks my heart.
Yeah, we're learning to be different and do better. And it doesn't necessarily, maybe they don't think it comes from a bad place. Maybe they didn't know.
Correct. Yeah, not all parents. It's funny because when I say this, people immediately get defensive about their parents, and it makes me laugh because they immediately assume that I'm saying that their parents are evil and they're this, that, and the other, and it's not that at all. Like you said, sometimes their parents just didn't know any better, and
Mhm.
that's okay. And you still need to address your trauma. Like I feel that because it was they say, oh, but they didn't know any better, it's a way of dismissing their own childhood wounds, and then they stay stuck in the same pattern, and because they don't want to point at, okay, this, what mommy did here, or what daddy did here was like painful.
Yeah, because you love them. I mean,
Yeah.
you still love them, right? Yeah, I'm learning from my mistakes every day. So
I
as
bet.
well as a parent. But yeah, it's so important. I really love that you spoke about that, Melanie, about the acceptable, and what's acceptable anyways, like all those acceptable emotions. And it doesn't make it easier for people to deal with their pain. And
No, it doesn't. I'm not sure if you've heard me say, like, I've just put a recent video out, like, healing doesn't take time, it takes courage.
Oh, I love that so much.
It takes courage to make the decision to feel and to point at what was wrong, what was abused, what was not, when they neglected you, and
Mm. And not only just courage, but I think that's why it's great for people to connect with people like you, because once you do open up, you need the tools. What do I do with all these feelings? Right? Because it's
yeah.
one thing to open up and to start connecting with your emotions, but then what do you do? They have to have somebody to guide them, because then you're like, wow, I'm feeling too much. How do people deal with that when they're just feeling too much and you're afraid of them going back into themselves?
Um, this is the issue, because when you're feeling overwhelmed, when you're feeling too much, you are actually on the edge of your breakthrough. And what most people do is they withdraw, and they react to it, and then they want to do something to make it go away. But actually, it's about you learning to feel overwhelmed and be okay feeling overwhelmed. And so you're consciously, I mean, there are things that you can do, like breathing, slowing down your breath, taking your awareness into your body, being present. You still feel overwhelmed, but you're sort of working, allowing it to be there. You're not judging it. You're just feeling it and going through it. And what will happen is, actually, the more that you can surrender to this emotion rather than react to it or try to make it go away, the quicker that you'll get to the other side. So it's not about doing something with the overwhelm. It's actually sitting with it. And that's what most people don't want to do, right?
Let it get ugly. Let it get ugly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Until, you have nothing left. Like, just
I love that.
get it. For me, what happens sometimes was when I'm ready to, like, okay, enough is enough, and I need to sit with myself and figure things out. What helps me sometimes? It might sound trivial, but a weighted blanket.
Yeah.
Sometimes can help me.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I don't want anybody to see me going through this ugly stage, but I feel like it's still like a hug, or something. Like, people can find different ways, different things to do in those moments that it's like an addict, right? So if an addict is going through withdrawal and they get to that point where they're vomiting and they're doing all these things, and it's just like that edge, like what you were talking about. I love that you said that. Then you're on the breakthrough. It's so true. That's the hardest moment. It's the hardest moment.
And like you said, I like that you said about the blanket, because sometimes, I've gone under the blanket, especially when it's fear related. But there are different things, obviously, the being with it and just going through it. But for me, sometimes I write poetry. When I'm in the middle, when I'm in the middle of a black hole and in a state, I just start to hear words, and this just happened naturally. It wasn't something that, I'm not a poet. I don't consider myself a poet, but it just started to happen. And every time I went to a deep core wound, I started to hear words, and then I would write it. And it was, whenever I finished the poem, I was on the other side of the breakthrough. So poetry is something that sort of came out of the blue for me.
I love that so much. I was looking at your website. So for those that are listening, please go and read her poems. They are so beautiful, honestly. And that's a great
They're
way.
pretty dark, aren't they? They're pretty heavy.
But you know what? When you're in a dark place, you appreciate that. It's okay that they're dark. That's it. They're real. Like, if I'm in a dark place, I'm not going to go, oh, like sometimes dark stuff can make you feel worse for a minute. And then it changes. And it's like, I don't feel alone in this. I don't feel like I'm the only one. It's okay. I'm not going to die from my pain. Like, somebody else knows what this is like. And sometimes when you can't put words to certain feelings and you read somebody else's, like, I read your poems and I think they're beautiful. Like,
thank
for me,
you.
Honestly, people go on there because she's got a whole tab for her poems. But for me, it's songwriting. So I tend to write songs and just get the feelings out there, because music is connecting, that's my thing. But we all have different things, you know, whether you put
Yeah.
a painting on a canvas or whether, I always find though it's something creative. But even if you
Yeah,
don't
correct.
feel, yeah, but even if you don't feel like you're a creative person and you can't draw, it's not about how good you are at what you're doing, it's just about doing it.
Yeah, it's about expressing it creatively somehow.
Yeah. And do you find that
Yeah.
most people, like when you say, oh, you have to, get in tune with your emotions and everything, do you feel that most people think it's just about talking? Because a lot of times you can't talk about it. That's the whole point of why you're there and why you're suppressing it.
I find people ask me, what do I do?
That's good. Action, right?
What do I do? But actually it's the opposite. I'm like, you don't have to do anything.
Mm,
You have to be with the emotion. That's what you need to do if you want to do anything. So um, I seem to attract clients that want to do, they want to intellectualize and do rather than feel,
mm,
So obviously when we work together, when I have a session with someone, in the session, that's when I sort of hold the space for them to really go deep. And then I do give them homework and things to, and I give them journaling questions and things. But it's the feeling and just being and not doing that I find people struggle with the most.
mm.
But having said that, what we're just talking about, being creative does help to
Mhm.
get in touch with the emotion.
Well, I think it can be a good starting point for people that are really struggling, just to, because sometimes it's hard to put feelings to, sometimes there aren't any words yet that are in the vocabulary of, that I feel
Yeah.
really explain what it is. Like I'm sure, like we all, I think, feel emotions that we can't find the words.
Yeah.
Like those words haven't been created yet, but sometimes when you're doing something creative, I think it just comes out. Maybe it lets you feel and not have to speak the words because you can't find them sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. That's nicely said. Yeah. It's
Just
because it's important for us to, I'm not sure if you heard this, but Carl Jung says that you have to pinpoint the emotion in order to sort of process it and heal it. But if you can't pinpoint it, then what do you do? So yeah, expressing it creatively in a way where you feel complete. Okay, this represents how I feel.
I love when you're talking, Melanie, about, you said it's not so easy as just to say I'm depressed, right? There's probably like 5 things behind that. Like you said, the rage, the anger, the uncertainty, like the self-doubt, all these things. Those are the pinpointed things that you want, right? You want people to go behind why are you
Yeah.
depressed, like, and really get into, rather than just say I'm depressed, like, but what is that feel for you? Because for you it felt rage, for me it might feel lonely, or it might feel something else.
Yes. Yeah, correct. There'll be different reasons for different people. But also, even just like, let's take depression, for example. A lot of people may be depressed and they don't even know it, because they busy themselves with things. Or, I always say that I was a high functioning depressed person because I had a social life. I was working and I was doing this and I had friends, but deep down I was depressed. So, and I find that I get a lot of, successful people, CEOs and managers, and they have jobs and they have a social life, but yeah, they're unfulfilled and depressed. So, and they didn't know it. It was just sort of lingering there for like some simmering there for like some time before they actually
Thank you. Thanks for saying that.
took action.
Yeah, no, thank you for saying that, because I think as society, we have a picture of what a depressed person looks like.
Yeah.
It could be somebody who can't hold a job, or somebody who, doesn't take care of their kids, or doesn't do, it's not true.
Not true at all.
True. It's a good word that you said, high functioning, because that was me. I had a job, I was social,
Yeah.
I had all these things, but nobody knew the me when I got in the car after my shift. Immediately, then I could take off the armor, and just everything, like want to be under the blanket and just not talk to anybody. And then it would take all that healing in the evenings to get enough energy to do the job in the morning, to do all these
Yes.
things, to be there for other people. And I don't think people realize that. I think that we need to become informed, more and more, that one thing for one person isn't the same as the other person. So thank you for saying that.
100%. And isn't that sad that the majority of society is depressed, and we don't feel safe or comfortable talking about it? We sort of try to hide it and live in this facade.
It's very sad. A lot of people are walking around unhappy, for sure. For sure. And that's why you do what you do.
Yeah.
Because it works.
Oh,
And
yeah, 100%.
you're so easy to talk to. Like, I'm sure people come to you and they always feel better. It's amazing.
Well, sometimes I do have to confront them with the truth that they don't want to hear, but
yes, but that's when you have was it John Kelly you said? Was
yes.
that the name of the okay. So I could see him maybe saying, okay, you need to start working on this. And you're probably like in your mind going, all right, he's being mean, or I don't want to hear him yelling at me.
Yeah, he's being harsh, or
like, yeah. But then it's like, thank God for people like that.
Yeah.
So
sometimes you plant a seed, right? Maybe they're not ready now, but I've had clients come back to me after 2 years or 6 years, wow, or 4 months, and say, 2 years ago you told me that I had father issues, this, that, and the other, and I didn't believe you. I thought you were, but you were spot on. Can we work together?
Because we become defense, we put up this defense, right? Like we get defensive, and it's true.
And I'm pretty blunt. I like things. I just like to get to the core. I don't like you said, when we were talking before, I don't like small talk, but let's just get straight to the core, the heart core, as I call it. And because that's where the true healing is, right?
Absolutely. I love it. Life is too short to be talking about the weather. I don't know. I just like, honestly, I did that for years and it didn't help me. That's great. Is there anything that we didn't talk about today that you really want the audience to know? Is there anything that you'd like to speak about that maybe we didn't get to?
Yeah, I wanted to share a little bit about emotional addictions and how it can actually be very subtle. So you could be addicted to, the common one would be like people pleasing and self-sacrifice and workaholic. But then you could actually be addicted to, coffee as a way to suppress your emotions. Or you could be addicted to self-pity or complaining.
Yes.
For example, and or addicted to judging others to make yourself feel better. So we have a lot of emotional addictions that we're not aware of. And all of these stem from somewhere. And it's really about, being honest with yourself and really taking a good look at yourself. And where do I do this? What am I doing out of addiction and impulse and to avoid an emotion rather than out of joy and out of like, I love this, or, but I think, that's the only thing that I want to share. There's a lot of things that we do to avoid feeling, and they're little things that we wouldn't think of.
It's true. If we put the focus on somebody else's problems, And I don't know about you, but I was addicted to being in the dark place. I was so used to it. It was less work. Less work.
Just it can
there be.
And all of the states, such as depression, actually, and anxiety, it becomes an addiction eventually.
Yeah, there are a lot of unhappy people in the world, but you know what? I have a lot of hope. I have hope because I think more people, especially this new generation coming in, like my son's age, they're more in tune with themselves. And I think as parents, we're learning from our traumas and we're trying to be different for the new generation, for our kids as well. And I do see it getting better. I do see people healing and more people talking about it, and it being more accepted to talk about it. You don't have to have it all together to be a decent.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you. I think a lot of people are waking up. A lot of people are starting to do, their inner work. And that's a good thing, of course, because then that's also going to impact your children and their joy. And hopefully someday, we will have children and they won't have to experience any of this.
I think it's healthy to experience some of it, because I think you do need, I think a life without any adversity at all won't really help people either. Like you won't know how, to feel, how it is to feel bad and to feel good. But I don't want people to experience traumas, but I think we do need to, have a life where there are ups and downs so we can appreciate things more too, right? But yeah, but not the holding in of emotions. That I hope disappears.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I see the healing in the healing coach here today, Melany. I see your healing coming through.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Nelia.
Thank you. Thank you. And tell us where we can find you, where we can work with you, where we can see your beautiful poems. And I must say, your video, Living with Your Open Heart, an open heart video on your website is so beautiful, so genuine. It really talked to me and spoke to me, and yeah, it was beautiful. So everybody,
thank you
too. But what's your website?
It's just my name. It's Melany with a Y, melany-oliver.com. And you can, the poems is on there at the top tab. You can click on the poems and then you'll check that out. And if you subscribe, you will get the full documentary. So that was just a snippet of a documentary that I created. I'm not sure if you... I'm
going to do that. Yes.
Oh, you did?
A chance, but I'm going to sign up for sure. Yes.
So you'll receive the documentary and a reflection workbook that goes with the documentary. So you can start healing your emotional wounds. Yeah, you can find me on Facebook. I've just started a new Instagram account like a couple of weeks ago. I think that's it. LinkedIn as well, if you're a LinkedIn person.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm so glad to have connected with you. And you really brought some things to the forefront today that I think are really going to help the audience and the people listening at home. Because no one goes without some kind of trauma or story. We all have that. I mean, being alive and being just a human being, we're not exempt, everybody. So if you're thinking to yourself, well, I'm going to pretend I don't, you're kidding yourself, because we all do, and nobody's going to believe you anyways. And we just need to deal with our stuff, get to the ugly, ugly part, so that you can get, what was the way you said it? Get to the edge of your breakthrough, right?
Yeah. Get to the edge and go through it so you can have your breakthrough.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Melany.
Thank you for having me here, Nelia, and I hope that your audience enjoys, our chat.
Oh, I know they will. It's absolutely amazing. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. If you enjoyed what you heard, please subscribe or leave a review. See you next week on the Giving Starts With You podcast.